Hi, I'm Nigel Fitzackley from NGU Home Editors. I'm here today with Nick, a good friend of mine. And the reason for this podcast is to meet landlords and discuss their life stories, to discuss how they've made money out of property, what their future plans, and where they see the property market going. So, Nick, how are you?
Thanks, Nige. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, I'm very well in sunny Cape Town.
Cape Town, brilliant. It's the winter over there, is it?
So we're still in winter, a few more months. We're moving into spring, and then we're going to have an amazing summer over November, December time. So when lockdown finishes, hopefully we'll see a lot of you guys coming over and having a really great holiday by the sea, by the mountain, amongst the vineyards.
I think we all need a holiday after the last 3 or 4 months, don't we? So
I think we all need a change from our own homes. Everyone, we can quite happily do a property swap.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. So anyway, Nick, I've known for 25 years. Not only is he a landlord, but he's a property owner on 2 continents. He owns property in London and Cape Town, which are 2 of the most amazing cities in the world. I'd love to find out how he managed to do that. And so this is why I'm here today, to chat to Nick and find out how he manages to manage all these properties all over the world, how he manages to live in Cape Town and own properties in London, and really just to get to know what property's done for him as a landlord. So, Baz, it's just really, can you explain how this happened?
Sure. So Nigel, this wasn't by strategy that I was owning property over different continents. It was almost, the property was in line with my lifestyle. So after university, I was staying at home for a while. I saved up enough money for a deposit, got a bit of help from my parents, and was then lucky enough to get on the property ladder. The first thing I knew, of course, even with a bit of help from parents, you still, as a young professional, starting out in the city of London, we've got big mortgage payments. We've also got a nice lifestyle to lead. The first thing I wanted to do was get friends, university friends and school friends who are known to come and live with me. So it was a 3-bedroom house, basically 2 normal bedrooms and 1 what we call box room. And in that, and to keep my costs low, I slept in that box room for 3 years. And that box room is literally, you could put maybe 12 small boxes in, not a lot else. But it was a great lesson in terms of, I've been lucky to be given that help from parents, but then realizing to be able to afford that lifestyle, one has to make sacrifices to enjoy it. And so that became part of my lifestyle, living with friends and being on that property ladder, which I've managed to keep for the last 20 years. And it's been a good investment as well. It's turned out to be a very good investment. And then as part of my my job, because property was, like I said, it wasn't the way I saw of making money. It's part of it's a side investment. I focused on my career, which is software sales, and as part of that, we saw globalization happen and the opportunities around the world. And it meant that with work, I moved to different continents, from Asia back to Europe and Ireland, and now back to South Africa. And because I've been in South Africa for now 12 years, it meant that it also made sense to buy at a point. Now, even then, in the other continents, I was there for a period of time, whether it's 2 years or 3 years. And sometimes you think, shall I buy now? Shall I buy later? Is money in rent a waste? But sometimes renting just allows one to have a view of a city that you're unfamiliar with. In London, I'm familiar. I know what to do. It makes sense to buy as quick as possible to get on a ladder. But when one is posted or moved around with work to new places, sometimes you need time to say, hey, are we going to be here for a period of time? If so, properties tends to be a 10-year plus investment, And because I know I'm here, I put down roots, and it's also been a good place. And so, Cape Town. So that's why I bought property, a beautiful home in Cape Town. And that's also proved to be a very good investment as well.
I have to disclose to everybody now for full transparency, actually, that I used to live with Nikhil when I was younger, when I was in my 20s. And I've actually been a resident of the said box room as well, which once Nick upgraded himself to the double room. He kindly let me stay there for a while. And yeah, so that was in Croydon in London, which just to give people some transparency on what Nick owned, it was a 3-bed terraced house, new build, close to Croydon Station, which, I mean, you obviously can fill this in, but which for me is a genuinely good investment, because within London, people want to be close to commuter spots. Croydon was, for me, always an undervalued area of London, because it had great transport links into central London, London Bridge, East Croydon, relatively low prices for that area of the world. And what we say up in the Northeast as well, the type of property investment advice we give to people is actually to stick with houses if you can afford them, because generally what happens with a house is somebody comes in there, a young family, they want the tap fixing, or there's an issue with some benches in the kitchen. You get a little bit of to and fro once they move in, and then you don't hear from them for the next 12, 15 years. As the kids grow up, they go to the local schools, and actually they just want to live in a home. They don't want to harass you. They just want to live somewhere nice. It's a stable income. And really, for me, that's why people get involved in property, because they just want to have that stable income source, a hands-on investment, and it's the best way of managing that asset. I mean, how have you found that over the last 20 years owning that type of property, Nick?
Yeah, it's also very true, Nigel. I have also bought a flat in Croydon as well, but I've also tended to pick young professionals for the flat, and the types of people that have gone for the houses have tend to be families, and you've seen less of a turnover. They're more reliable in that sense, and it's been good, because the philosophy I have is not to try and maximize the rental I can get from a particular tenant, but to have tenants that are happy and are reliable, because it's not my main business. My main business is the software industry, but I do want less headaches. And if it means someone not moving around a lot and is staying there and is happy, it's great. And in answer to your question earlier, or point earlier, is how do I manage properties that are a different continent for me? And the only way I've managed to do it is I've been very, very lucky, again, with the help of people I trust, which is, in this case, is my parents. It's close to where they live. And so when there's an issue where a plumber is needed at 4 a.m, or there's an issue with a garage, I'm very, very fortunate. A lot of these problems or a lot of these issues are just taken care of. And in that there is a cost to that, which I really haven't factored when you put in the maths. So if you have people that you can rely on, whether it's a company or a trusted friend or family, it's a real bonus, and that doesn't go in an Excel spreadsheet normally. But when but it's a real value, and it has helped a lot. In making these properties maintainable, and in helping the property value go up as well, which is nice.
Yeah, I think that's what you said about wanting to treat people fairly and nicely is a great point, actually, which I think a lot of property investors can miss, that actually you are renting somebody's home to somebody. And always in life, if you treat people fairly and nicely and you treat them with respect, majority you'll get that respect back, so that's the way we kind of like to work, and what the way we like to talk to people is, actually, if you spend a little bit of money, if you actually try and invest in a property a little bit, you'll attract better tenants, you'll attract people who are more bought into treating that property better, and actually that'll work out to be a better return for you as well. So that's something we definitely try and teach people or discuss with people, because sometimes people do just look at the numbers. They just do want to know about the gross number and the net number. and really they just see it as a business in between, when actually you're dealing with people's lives, you're dealing with people's homes, and actually if you look at it like that, you'll end up with a better result, I think anyway. So I don't know if you agree.
Totally agree. And you know, one of the things, the lovely thing about families is they have children, and these children go to schools, and they want stability, and that's nice. That's nice as someone who, on the other end, who is a supplier, as in a landlord, who also wants stability. So, you know, we can find a nice amicable point where it works for both parties. Yeah.
And so, in terms of the London market, you know, I used to live in London. I've lived in London for 12 years. I own the majority of my properties now in the northeast of England. My family's from the northeast. My mum's from Newcastle. My grandparents were miners up in Newcastle. That's my connection to the northeast, anyway. But in terms of, you know, chatting to northerners out there who live in the northeast, or people who aren't from the southeast at the very least, who aren't from London. How have you found house price growth over the last 25 years and rental growth in terms of your returns?
Yeah, so it's easy to look up the price of a property on a property website and value it. And on paper, it's very good. It's definitely, you know, I bought the properties in, you know, early 2000, and it's gone up to almost three times that. Which is nice. But I only say an asset is only worth something as once you need to sell it. And the market changes all the time. You know, we're in a very strange time now with COVID. That's changing the market dynamics, and that could be either good or it could be bad. But either way, what I do also rely on is steady income, rental income, which is nice. And I'm sort of, yeah, and that's been great. And also with part of my job, I've also made it a point to, because it's not my main business property, and my main business is software and sales, is to pay off a mortgage as quick as I can, and that's been important. So on paper things look good, but an asset is only really worth something once you can liquidate it and turn it into something you need. So that's also a bit of an advice. Is like, it's one thing to have property, it's great, but we also need other asset classes. And you know, it's nice to have property in different countries and almost to diversify an investment. But you also need to do. I also believe that you need investments in different classes altogether. You know, some more liquid than others.
And I totally agree, because you know, you're only by having all your eggs in one basket, then you're totally dependent on the property market. It's interesting to say that you said you decided to pay off your mortgage, because something which I've always looked to do is maintain quite a large amount of debt, not an unmanageable amount of debt, but quite a large amount of debt. And the reason why I've always wanted to maintain some level of debt is, one, in this current era, you know, since the depression or the recession in 2007, 2008, interest rates are being rock bottom. The cost of debt is absolutely nothing. You can get in the UK a 5-10-year mortgage for 2 to 3%, even lower probably. And so for me, if you can't earn more than 2 to 3% over a year, then you're not really looking hard enough. So I've always tried to maintain quite a lot of debt. And the reason for that is because debt always stands still. I think Einstein said that compound interest is one of the world's great things, and so compound interest on house prices obviously compounds the house prices up each and every year, whereas the debt will always stand still, because the debt doesn't compound, it stays in one place. And I think a lot of our parents have taken advantage of that as well by owning property. Gradually the debt's always stood still and the house prices have continued to increase. What's the reason you really, is it because you live abroad, or have you done the expansion what you want to do, or what's the reason why you're looking to really pay down debt at the moment, Nick?
So my philosophy is, in the same way that we do pay interest and it's compounded, and you're right, you're 100% right, there are other ways, areas that we can make better investments. But my philosophy is pay down debt as quick as you can with disposable income, but always have the loan facility to the bank. Always be able to have an access to liquidity. You know, we saw in the 2007, 2010 collapse of the banks, the Lehman Brothers, the big banks, no matter how prestigious, no matter how powerful these guys are, if they haven't got access to liquidity, they fall. And so, yes, have low liabilities, simple thing, but have the ability to call on a lot, you know, to be able to access capital quick if need be. And yeah, that's my philosophy. Yeah, keep things simple. But you're right. I also, I think I need to think a bit more deeply now about how to leverage what I have to an extent. But you know, life is also about a number of different phases, and maybe this is the phase I'm looking at.
Yeah, no, I totally.
Can learn something from that. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, the one thing I actually always say whenever I chat to my friends or I chat to anyone about property, actually, is the thing I always say actually is if you're gonna maintain any level of debt, people always tend to have this emotional attachment to your own home rather than a buy-to-let property or an investment property. Ultimately, if you get into financial distress, they'll take the first asset and then they'll come to the second asset to pay off the first debt. Yeah. The best way to raise money ever in the UK, full stop, is the mortgage market on your own home. So if you're going to maintain any debt anywhere, maintain it on your own home, because you're going to be able to raise debt at 1 or 2%. On a buy-to-let property, that'll be 3 or 4%. On a commercial building, that'll be 4 to 5%. And off a business, that'll be 8 or 9%. So the best place, if you are going to use, you are going to raise debt to do anything, is to maintain that debt on your own home, because it's kind of like category A, prime asset. The banks is such a competitive market. The banks love lending on it. And so that's the biggest advice I always say to everybody, but it's the biggest advice everybody always ignores as well, because they love to not have any debt on their own properties. It's kind of ingrained from our parents, isn't it? Where they say, you know,
from a different generation. Yeah, you're 100% right. But it's also very prudent as well. But there are better ways, like you're saying, the more optimum ways of where we can put that money and buy another one, or invest in something different.
Yeah, brilliant. So moving swiftly on from London, which I just have to say, Nick's kind of underplayed this. He's done incredibly well from the London market, you know, owning property for the last 25 years. I'd say to anyone, you know, when you make your decisions, it has to be at the right time in your life. So if you're young, I'd definitely suggest to get into property, because over a time frame of 20 to 30 years, like what Nick and myself's own property, you will see that asset price growth, or you'd expect to see it anyway. And so I definitely advise to do that. And myself and Nick have done well out of that by just simply sitting and holding often, you know, you do well from. But then sadly, actually, for me, because me and Nick are good friends, he moved to Capetown for work, which I haven't seen Nick very often over the last 10 years, which is a great shame. I'd love to come and visit him. I know the Lions are going over next year, and I was chatting to somebody this weekend, and I was trying to chat to my missus and see if I could get a trip arranged, but it was a conversation. So I'd love to come over there. So Nick lives in beautiful Capetown. I heard it's an amazing place, Nick. So briefly give us an overview of this amazing city you live in these days.
Yeah, look, I mean, frequently Capetown is voted the #1 holiday destination. According to travelers, it's done really, really well. It's own as a city, as a country. South Africa has only really opened up to tourism, and it actually exploded over the last decade. It's got so much natural beauty to that. You know, it's a city that's surrounded by sea, surrounded by, you know, a famous mountain, surrounded by vineyards, and it's very, very. And what is very nice is the rand is very weak, which is sort of bad news for those that are living here, but wonderful news for foreigners who find that the pound goes very, very far, and that always helps with a good holiday. And we get great weather for most of the year. So, you know, since I've been here 12, 13 years, I've regularly, I think my parents have come themselves to Cape Town 3-4 times a year themselves, plus friends, plus that. So South Africa is really exploding in terms of the tourism destination, and particularly if you then combine it with a safari and up in the Kruger Park or different parts, and it's just such a wonderful country to explore. And I still am not tired of it.
Well, I'd certainly love to come and visit. It's definitely high on my destinations of coming to visit, and
spending time.
Yeah, I'd love to. And Nick being a property person, he's done something crazy over there. Which I wouldn't expect anyone to do. He's Airbnb'd his own home. He goes and lives in other people's homes and Airbnb's his own house. So, Nick, explain this to us all.
So again, we talked in the beginning about property being part of a lifestyle, and my advice again, in the same way when I got onto the property ladder as straight out, it was soon after university with the assistance of my parents. What I did, I bought a beautiful home in Capetown, and the circumstances meant that I'm a father of 2 daughters, and I have the children half a week, and half a week the house is quiet. So then the dilemma is, I've got this beautiful home, swimming pool, table tennis area, pool table, but the house is quiet half a week. So do I change my home or do I downgrade? Consider I have the kids half a week. So what I decided to do is solve that utilization problem. I know that Cape Town is a very popular tourist destination. I know that I've kitted this beautiful home out for a family type of experience that we're only enjoying in truth half a week. So what do I do the other half a week? So knowing this, combining the beautiful location of Cape Town, knowing the fact I've got this asset which isn't fully utilized for the whole 7 days a week, and knowing that during December, January, February, our summers, people are flocking to Cape Town and looking for different types of accommodation other than the traditional hotels. So it lends itself very well to the Airbnb market. So I'm very conscious of playing with the prices, the dynamic pricing, and adjusting it to seasonal demand. And as a homeowner, I have the power to either live in it that week or rent it out. And sometimes by just looking at the maths, I make a decision. And it then allows me to pursue a slightly different lifestyle, because like Nigel earlier, we talked about, for me, it's not, of course, numbers are important, but this is also my lifestyle. So, often my children talk to me, they would like a cat, like a dog, or a pet. Now, the nature of my industry or the work I do as my primary job is that I before COVID, I was traveling a lot. I was traveling regularly up into different parts of Africa, and I was away. So to look after a pet was difficult. But it means that when I do rent the place out, I will rent out a farm for a week for the kids. So they'll have their fill of horses, cats, dogs, geese, whatever they want to see. And the next week, say my parents are going to come and visit, and my dad, I know, for example, he loves drinking the beautiful South African wine in the vineyards. So why don't you give someone an opportunity to have a unique experience? Rent out my place, and not with the view to making money on that or not, is to use that same budget and then go and rent a house on a vineyard. So if you're going to enjoy the glass of wine, and sit amongst the grapes and have this sort of unique experience that my father, who's from England, wouldn't have in London. And so really make those sort of memorable experiences. And that's an interesting way of using a house. And it also makes you very conscious of maintaining a house, because I tend, if I know someone's going to pay for a product or a service, I'm going to be more accountable, because I'm going to be reviewed. I'm a super host. I know that someone's going to, at the end of that week trip or whatever, is going to then give me comments. So I'm going to be very, very conscious of maintaining the house to a better standard than if it was just myself. And then I will let that, that paint sort of crack, or that little, door lock not work or whatever. I tend to be less forgiving from renting it out. And so it's a double win for everyone. And it's been a great experience from a lifestyle point of view. It's been extremely successful from a financial point of view, and it solves what I call the utilization problem of having an asset and not utilizing it enough, particularly when we do a fixed asset, where we have very, very little control of the value, other than over long periods of time.
Mm. I mean, I totally agree with you about what property can give you. And, it sounds like to me, some of the best things in life you can do is if it solves 2 or 3 problems together.
Yeah.
So if you win it from your own lifestyle, you win in terms of using your asset in a different way, you win from an income perspective, then why wouldn't you do that? That's, it's a triple win. And for me personally as well, and this is one of the things why I always recommend property to people. One, it's a relatively passive income stream. And 2, that extra income stream, it can provide you with those moments or those things in life you want to do, which ultimately often cost money.
Yeah.
So, and essentially by receiving that income, you get more time because you don't need to work as hard to earn that money. So again, that's a double win. So that's one of the reasons I've always been interested in property. Something which will give you that income to enjoy those moments with your parents, because those moments, are lost, aren't they, if you don't take advantage now anyway. And so we had a phone call before, and you were chatting about the Airbnb market. I take it in terms of the Northeast, we've tried serviced accommodation, Airbnb. We've been relatively unsuccessful, I'd have to say. It's a very seasonal, can be a seasonal industry, I'd say, unless you're in the city centre and you're chasing a hotel, replacing what a hotel does. With the Northeast weather being what it is, we can be very seasonal in terms of the winter. But it's not something we've been successful with in the Northeast, but certainly in places like Capetown, London, some of these big tourist destinations of the world, I'm sure it's incredibly popular and it's incredibly profitable as well. I mean, you were saying you kind of targeted a specific area within the Airbnb market. If you could explain that.
Yeah, so I also looked into the maths as to what was the percentage return I'd get if I rented out my house on a long-term basis pre-COVID, and the percentage I would get would be about 4 to 5% on a long-term rental after costs, and that's the value of the house, not a purchase, but of that today's value, for example. Now, using the same metric, if I do an Airbnb, I would tend to get double that, between 8 and 9%. And and these figures are excluding mortgage interest. And a lot of this data is pretty much backed up because there are reports that you can get on the area, very, very detailed reports on Airbnbs in the area, which are great for someone who wants to maximize or needs guidance on how to price product, particularly if it's the first time I'm pricing. How do I know? So it's very good to understand the market. But I also need to know that of course, as someone like myself wants to not only be in line with market, but almost to beat the market. So how can one do that? And it's to look at the market itself and then to create a segment. I can play to my strengths. So like I mentioned, I'm a father of 2 young daughters. It's a very family-oriented home. I know the number one people who are looking at the reports of who's renting these types of properties are people from the UK, people from America. They're coming from long-haul destinations. They're looking for accommodation other than what they could find in a hotel. They want to put 6 people in a home. They're looking to ensure that the pool itself has pool safety. That's very, very high. They're looking at the play area that I have has also got little gates around the side, so that the children are sort of enclosed in a nice, safe area. They want to know that there's a puppet show, there's a tree house. So what I managed to do is target the family segment. This home isn't aimed at the party 20-year-olds, and I'm very, very selective about actually excluding that type of market and saying, look, it's a family home. And as such, the decision makers who are looking at making these decisions from overseas, that they like that type of values and they can see the value and are prepared to pay for it. And I'm trying to, and before, particularly before COVID, because there is a world before COVID, and I was trying to work out and address issues or wants that aren't really articulated. So I know people are coming, and I know that as a parent, that you're carrying a buggy, you're looking for restaurants that are child friendly. You're looking at a lot of these, like cots. So what I started doing was letting people say, guys, okay, well, when you do come, I'm going to provide a cot. These are the cots. These are the travel, buggies. These are a couple of car seats you can borrow. Because the less that you have to carry will help your experience before you come. And I found that is a really good way of building trust, and trying to address people's wants before they can even articulate. And as such, when they come, there's a real discussion about some sort of child-friendly restaurants in the neighborhood, how far they are to walk, which ones are play areas, which don't. As part of the house, so I include my housekeeper as part of this. So she's a trusted nanny of mine for 5 years. So so should the parents want to go out for a night out, they can be assured that the person that is going to be looking after their children for 3-4 hours is someone that I've been trusted, that federated trust, that lady is there, and that helps. And sometimes a parent, a mum or whatever, needs an extra pair of hands. Because holidays are great, but if you are a self-catering, which such holidays are, it's also quite, it's quite tiring with kids. So to have a nanny or to have that help, someone you can trust is a real differentiator. And so we just little things like that, which cost me very little, but add a lot of value to someone else, I find went a long way. And it helped, and you can see that in the reviews that I got, where people were very, very appreciative, and a lot, and I anticipating those are the type of people that would come back again and again. For me, it's the value is getting the right type of tenants or right type of people that guests, I want to say, that will respect the place. Because for me, that's value. It's a home. This is a home, not just an asset. But
I think that's an incredible point, actually, Nick. Is sometimes in life people rush from one shiny penny to the next shiny penny. So they'll go, they'll go, oh, that's working well for me, but this one will work even better, and this one will work even better, and this one will work even better. When actually what you should do is just find something which works for you, which is profitable, which makes a decent return. And the easiest thing in life is just to do it again. Because that'll just give you the return you want. It's the easiest way to replicate something you want. And so in the Northeast, we tend to say to people to buy 3-bed semis. They're cheaper than detached, close to schools. Areas are a little bit mixed. They're not the best areas, but they're not the worst areas. They're probably mid-market areas. You'll get families in there. So on paper, they're not the highest returns. In the Northeast, you can buy properties for 25 to 30 to 40,000 pounds, 2-bed terrace house in Middlesbrough easily. Returns look incredible in those areas, but in terms of what your actual returns is after your void periods, your rent not being paid, post damages, churn of tenants, versus getting a nice property in a decentish area, nice family, let them rent that property for 15 years. Also, house price growth tends to be better in better areas as well, rather than your lower income areas, just because you've got that residential buyer in there and greater demand because people actually physically want to live in that area rather than an investor area. So again, that's the type of thing we stick to. And it sounds like to me, you've got your little niche, which works for you, which is amazing.
Yeah, and this was life before lockdown, before COVID. And now we've obviously had a block on flights, which has had a massive impact to a city such as Capetown, which is a very has been marketed that, tourism is now one of the highest industries. How we are going to use our homes furthermore should be a question we should be asking ourselves. because I think just to live in your home is anyone can do that. But the question is, how can we intelligently use it? And there are a few ideas I'm thinking about. What does it mean by being forced to be in our homes? As much as I love my home, how can I monetize that stability? And I think there are areas I'm sort of considering, but let's see how we're going. Yeah.
Well, that was.
But it's also nice to work. It's also nice to work from our homes as well, which is very, very. It's also a nice way of going back to the utilization problem. So those that are lucky that have got a home office in their homes and can be not having to drive to the office. What a great way of utilizing an asset as well. I think that's going to be a big change.
I think it'll be incredible how things do change, or what changes we do see over the next few years in terms of, will people want to live in the countryside more? Will people want to move out of cities? Will people want gardens? Will people want larger homes for home offices? Will there actually be some massive trends and changes because of this, or ultimately will we just go back to normal? God knows, but I think certainly you'll see some moving from the city because of home workings becoming a greater part of people's lives. It's something which generally only applied to senior management or people in certain industries, such as like the IT industries. Whereas now I think a lot of companies in a lot of different roles, from call centres to general office roles, to letting agents, to estate agents, have all worked from home and found staff can be trusted, that you can still work in an efficient way from home. And ultimately, for myself anyway, in our agency, I'm always looking to keep good staff. And the best way of keeping good staff is to look at not only at the pay, but also at the conditions. And so if you're an agent who's offering the ability to work from home, I'm sure you'll be able to maintain your staff levels better than an agency who doesn't. So for me, that's certainly something I'm looking at. That's certainly something I've learned from this whole lockdown period in the UK. And it'll be an amazing time to see where we go from here. I think, but I've got my two final questions for you, Nick. So I know you've got things to do today, and you're the other side of the world. So my first question is, what's your plans over the next couple of years, property-wise, or can you see any clarity in this post-COVID world in terms of property, or is it still too early to say?
Well, I think it's always nice to try and be ahead of the curve. I think in South Africa, because I'm talking about the market here, I think that prices are dropping dramatically. People are over leveraged. There's been no government bailout, so prices are going to go down, and there's going to be opportunities from that. In the UK, I see prices continuing to actually rise, I think. But like I said, UK, I love the stability of the country, even with issues like Brexit and all this stuff, versus many other parts of the world. It still represents stability, and it still represents, should I want to come back, there's a position that I can just get back into my home soon after. My kids can go start university, and soon after, if we want, or we choose to live somewhere else. So our property will change. I think it will also depend on how our life starts. 7, 8 years from now, my children will be at university. Which country they'll be at university is an interesting question, but I'm sure that will be the biggest determinant for where I buy an next property, rather than try and really predict where the market is going. So I've always said, like, property sort of adds to your lifestyle rather than and to my career, rather than it being my entire business.
No,
that's an honest, from a personal perspective. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's great to hear, and it's definitely something which I think has helped you, and by purchasing property as you've gone along from country to country. rather than just, you know, having your properties in the UK and then just renting. That's definitely helped. And again, you're taking advantage of that leveraging and asset price growth because of that. And I suppose the last question I've got for you would be the best bit of advice you could give to a young man or woman who's looking to begin his or her property investing. What piece of advice would you give to somebody just starting out or thinking of starting out?
So I think you pointed about the importance of the compound interest. Now, that's the way the world works. So my advice to anyone young is to try and get, if you are to choose to get into property or any other asset class, get in early and have the discipline of keep investing again and again. And property is good by the nature of that. A mortgage forces you to make a continuous investment month after month. So get in early. Know the difference of owning a property versus a property owning you. And I think that's a very, very subtle difference in the sense that, make those properties work for you rather than you're always working just to have houses. What do you do with these homes? What do you do with all this? Property has been great because it provides a great security for me. We're in a very volatile world in terms of economics. So it's nice to have that surety. It also gives me a lot of freedom to start going and making investments into more riskier, projects within, IT startups. And that's quite good to have, again, talking about a mix of investments and classes. I would definitely say start early where you can. Get on that property ladder. That will help. Be bold, but be humble in the sense of how you use that property. And the example, Nigel, you and I talked about both having to, at different points of our lives, live in that, 6 room, a single bed only, and that's
I don't remember it, Nick.
Yeah, and it's about being humble about it and making sure that we haven't got an issue with cash flow. But we got to start small. But if we didn't do that, we would be years behind, I think, others. To be honest, I'd be years behind myself. So I'm very grateful that very influenced by my parents who encouraged me at an early age to do that, even though I had other plans of trying to spend my money in different ways. But getting that discipline of investing, which property gives you, been it's paid off dividends times 3, times 4, or whatever. Some of these investments over 20 years, and that's very difficult to find.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think the thing is, with any journey, it always has to begin with the first step. And unless you make that first step, that journey is never going to begin. So you just beginning that journey, whether that's saving for a deposit, you've got a deposit and invest in, or just to get yourself some education or start learning about property. That's a great investment in yourself, or different asset classes as well, I should say. So that for me is the beginning place, and that's kind of what you were saying. And also, I think you were talking about assets as well. And in terms of assets, getting an asset which actually provides you an income, which you've even done with your own home as well, which a lot of people perceive their own home as an asset, which it is, but it doesn't provide an income. And actually, an income generating asset is worth far more to you because it gives you that choice, that independence, all that lifestyle which you might want as well. But I'd just like to say thanks, Nick, for giving you my time. It's been amazing to catch up as well. We should do this more often. I'd love to see you in a year's time to come and watch the Lions. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that'll happen. So, but thank you so much for your time, Nick.
Yeah, please. I'd love to host you, Nigel, and the family.